This is your reality check.
Welcome to The Reality Check, the Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. I'm producer Pat, and it's just me today. We have something for you that we call a mashup. So if you've been watching the news, you're probably aware that we're experiencing the worst wildfire season in Canadian history. These have affected all Canadian provinces and territories except for Nunavut. The smoke that's coming from these fires has caused air quality alerts and evacuations in Canada, the United States, and Europe. Here in Toronto, as well as in Ottawa where Darren is, and in Gatineau where Adam is, we've all been subject to quite bad air quality alerts. So our theme today is fire and smoke. First, we're going to hear a segment from Adam about the Amazon rainforests, and then a follow-up from me about whether or not the Amazon rainforest is the lungs of the earth, and in fact, whether or not trees are the lungs of the earth. And lastly, we have a segment from Darren all the way back to 2013, so you're going to hear Elon on this one, talking about wood smoke. And this is when Montreal was looking at banning fireplaces, but it does talk about the risks of inhaling smoke from burning wood. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope everyone out there is staying safe and healthy, and we will talk to you soon with a brand new show.
You may have heard that the Amazon rainforest is on fire. This has made many headlines and quite a bit of buzz on social media over the past few weeks. Based on the news, it would seem like the fires are truly unprecedented, but what if I told you they weren't all that unusual for this time of year?
What?
I know that there's fires this time of year, that's not unusual, but the way it's being covered, it does seem like it's worse. So there you go.
This is the only time I can think of that there was news coverage of the Amazon rainforest on fire.
Yep, that's how I generally feel as well. Now, first, a bit of background on the Amazon rainforest. Now, a rainforest in general is a dense area of forestation which has a lot of rain. Now, when I was young, people mostly called all of these jungles, though this is a less specific term, and rainforest describes a more specific type of jungle or forest. So I guess I used to have the idea that they just kind of rebranded jungles to rainforests to make them a little more like hippie friendly or whatever, but it does really mean something, so it's not just a word that someone made up. Well, all words are made up, but it does mean something.
I agree. Well, actually, all words are made up.
They're all made up. It's all part of our intersubjective reality. It is real in a sense, and that's fine.
Oh, wow.
Activism to save the rainforests have existed for decades. There was a big focus being put on it during the 1990s, and this was a bit of a fad. Not to say that there wasn't any legitimacy to the concern, but it was like a big popular thing, and it was kind of the thing that people were into at the time. Now, we seem to be reliving an unusually high concern for the rainforest, and this is very recently. The Amazon rainforest spans many countries, though 60% of it is in Brazil, and that is the country that's been getting the most attention for these fires. Most attention, the most flack, the most criticism, whatever you want to call it. So what's causing these fires? Now, climate change is being thrown around, and though climate change is probably the greatest existential risk of our time, until the machines take over, it isn't necessary to explain this particular phenomenon and what's been going on this summer. The interior of the rainforest was pretty much intact until the 1960s, at which point a slash and burn method was used to clear out farmland, so certain portions of it were cleared out by large numbers of farmers. As the name suggests, this involves chopping down and setting fire to vegetation in order to create an area which is ready to plant crops. The most common use of this land is pasture for cattle, so they'll plant, some grass. Cows will eat it, kill the cows, sell the meat. Everyone makes money. Now, to further complicate things, the soils in the Amazon rainforest will only produce for a short period of time, losing fertility and potentially being overrun by weeds. Basically, it's surrounded by this jungle area that's got a lot of vegetation in it, so that spreads back in. So what's the simple solution? Instead of maintaining this land, move on to a new area, slash and burn, replant, repeat. Success. Now, the end effect, unfortunately, is deforestation of the rainforest, which is very bad, though some specific claims, such as the Amazon producing 20% of the Earth's oxygen, are just objectively false. We can get into that maybe in another segment, but most of the oxygen on Earth comes from the oceans.
Yeah, that stat was everywhere. Everywhere I looked, people were spewing that.
I think we actually had a listener write in about the Amazon rainforest being the Earth's quote-unquote lungs at 20%.
Right.
So, are there more fires this year? Or did they just get out of control? Or what's going on? Now, Brazil's president, Jair Bolsonaro, is getting a lot of blame for this year's fires due to his lax environmental policies. Reading some articles, it seems clear that this is a big new issue. The New York Times states, and I quote, "From January to July, fires consumed 4.6 million acres of the Brazilian Amazon, a 62% increase compared to last year." USA Today, and I quote, "There have been more than 74,000 wildfires across Brazil this year, up 85% over the same period in 2018, and about 40,000 of them are burning in the Amazon, according to the country's National Institute of Space Research." So these are numbers. I'm not disputing these numbers. Take these quotes for what they are. It sounds like there's been a massive jump from what there was there before. So let's see what NASA has to say. And I quote from the NASA Earth Observatory. "As of August 16th, 2019, an analysis of NASA satellite data indicated that total fire activity across the Amazon basin this year has been close to the average in comparison to the past 15 years.
No.
Yeah, so that one kind of blew my mind when I originally saw that. Now this is based on the Global Fire Emissions Database, so I drilled in to see what they were saying about this. Maybe make sure there wasn't some particular spin being put on it. Mm-hmm. Now this isn't terribly specific. They're saying close to the average. But it was certainly surprising, given the coverage. Even to be able to say that it's in the ballpark was shocking. So digging in, there's an update on the Global Fire Emissions Database from August 29th. That's a little more recent, so we can get a better idea of what's going on. And the update states that based on two metrics that they use, the 2019 fire season has the highest fire count since 2012. Now, one of the metrics goes back to 2003, and the other started only in 2012. So obviously that one that just started in 2012 means the highest yet. But the one going back to 2003, all considered, it's not the worst ever. It is specified that the fires are more intense this year. Now, going back to 2003 and comparing droughts, we can see that 2019 is not an extreme drought year. So an environmental explanation for the fires doesn't quite fit the bill. There have been heavy droughts in recent years, and these are due to climate change, but this year wasn't necessarily one of them. Now, when we're talking about climate change, the flip side of that is there is a negative impact on climate change because of the burning and the smoke and all sorts of things like that. Now, increases in deforestation are also high compared to recent years, but not higher than they were in the 2003 to 2008 timeframe. So there's a lot more slash and burn, a lot more deforestation going on in that timeframe. Now, details and graphs are in the links in the show notes at trcpodcast.com. So they are a bit high recently compared to recent years, which some news sources play off of, such as a graph from the BBC showing numbers of fires since 2013. And the title of that graph states, "This year has seen more than double the number of fires in Brazil since 2013. Well, 2013 is the lowest in the graph, but there isn't an increasing trend. So it's not like, you just take that quote for what it is. It either means something's going crazy this year, or there's been a gradual increase, and this is how bad it's gotten since 2013. But if you look at the graph, it's really up and down, but you're taking your frame of reference as the lowest point on this graph. It's a little dishonest. So this explains all the articles showing numbers that are comparing 2019 to 2018. Again, it's playing with the numbers a bit because 2018 was a year where the fires were pretty low. So when you present it like that and you say, oh, they're up 60% using this metric, or they're up 85% using this metric, it sounds shocking, but you can say, oh, well, if you compare it to 2016, it's not really up that much. Or if you go back even further, it's down. So you can play with the numbers to try to get the point you're trying to make across. And I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just saying you can put a spin on it. So further, a lot of viral content shows photos that aren't even from this year. So a tweet which got 500,000 shares on Twitter contains photos from 1989 and 2012. So the Amazon rainforest is burning, and while this seems like a shocking, once-in-a-lifetime sort of tragedy that we should all be tweeting about, it's sort of an annual thing. And this year's fires are pretty bad compared to the last few years, but they're not the worst in the past 15 or so. Should you care? Well, sure. You probably should have cared about it for the past 50 years, but that's not to say that you'll have much success in doing anything about it. But that's kind of another subject, potentially for another episode.
Didn't Neil deGrasse Tyson get quite a bit of heat for tweeting something about this?
Something about the similar point that Adam's trying to make, which was also what I was arguing about on Facebook when I was posting this stuff. It's right that whether it's happened before and there's a trend line is independent of whether it's good or bad overall.
Yeah.
But as you said, maybe it's always been an issue and maybe there should have been policies in place to address why local people might feel the need to do this. And if we don't want them to do it, then have them compensated in some way. It could also be the case that there is a different reason for this increase this year compared to last year. It's like, well, why would that be? Why would it go down so much last year and go up so much this year? And, you could say, well, there's random patterns and fluctuation and so on, but maybe there are specific reasons linked to political policies, or maybe they aren't. And in that case, there may be room for activism in one domain or another.
This has become like a big topic of conversation at the G7 when it's not new. So even politicians are getting swept away with this kind of narrative and the new popularity of it.
And they're somewhat responding to constituents.
Yes.
They care and then they have to say something. There's also the thing where the leader of Brazil insulted Macron's wife. So there's the whole other layer of A, they don't like the guy in the first place, the Brazilian leader, and then B, there's other political interpersonal games that people play.
Yeah. This is maybe getting a little too deep into it too, but the people doing this, there's hundreds of thousands of poor farmers who are trying to feed their families, and this is the best way they have to do it. So how do you counter that? People are like boycott beef and boycott soy. So now everyone's more poor, or now, what's that going to do? Are they going to slash and burn more because they can't afford to keep up? It's complicated. And the solutions are complicated, right?
And this is definitely a running theme. So if we look at North America, we completely destroyed a lot of the natural resources in order for people to become, we're somewhat wealthy in North America.
Yep.
But then we got a hard time when someone else tries to do it because they're poor.
Yeah.
Of course. We're still doing it now.
Sure. Yeah. And it's like pollution in developing nations, right? We got there that way and now they're getting there that way, but it's becoming a more global problem. So,
but still let us buy all the products that they're making.
Well, yes, if I can get them at the dollar store.
So we got the following note from Checker Chris on Facebook. Hi there. I'm not sure if you've covered this. The Amazon is often referred to as the lungs of the planet. Is it really possible that the Amazon produces that much oxygen compared to other parts of the planet? So Adam touched on this a little bit when he looked into the fires currently burning in the Amazon and concluded that while this year's fires are pretty bad compared to the last few years, they are not unusual and not the worst in the last 15 years. There are many good reasons to be concerned about fires in the Amazon rainforest, but I want to look at what's true. So, celebrities and political leaders have spoken out. Madonna and Jaden Smith have shared photos on social media. Leonardo DiCaprio said, quote, "The lungs of the earth are in flames." Soccer star Cristiano Ronaldo tweeted, "The Amazon rainforest produces more than 20% of the world's oxygen." French President Emmanuel Macron tweeted, "The Amazon rainforest, the lungs which produce 20% of our planet's oxygen, is on fire." Candidate for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States, Kamala Harris tweeted, "The Amazon creates over 20% of the world's oxygen." But these weren't the only sources. ABC News said it. CNN said it. Business Insider had it as part of the headline on their story about it. But before we jump into that, a bit on the pictures that were shared with many of these social media posts.
Uh-oh.
Mother Jones and others did some fact-checking and found that many of the shared photos were from other fires, including blazes in California and India, or were from previous years.
Wow, I'd heard the years, but I didn't know other countries entirely is that's a bit alarming.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, the photo Macron tweeted, which was retweeted more than 40,000 times, was taken by Lauren McIntyre, who died in 2003.
No.
Yep. Many people tweeted and retweeted photos from 2014 and 2015. Also making the rounds with the hashtag Amazon Rainforest is a picture from 2013 of a fire at Brazil's Tame Ecological Station. A photo that was retweeted more than 4,000 times with the hashtag Pray for Amazonia is of a fire in Montana's Bitterroot National Forest from 2000. Kendall Jenner retweeted a split image to her more than 28 million followers with a message about how fires in the Amazon have been burning for 3 weeks. The left side of the image dates back to at least 2014 when it was used in articles about forest fires in Sweden. The right side depicts a fire in Siberia.
When people ask, why do we do the show? Right there. That's why.
It's not surprising to me that these photos get retweeted and shared because the people who do so assume they're legitimate. But it's the fact that the person who used it originally, how does that happen? That you put this together and it's just a photo from somewhere else. Did they just Google forest fire? I don't even understand.
Okay, last example. A photo set of 4 images was shared a number of times. One picture depicts a forest fire in California from 2013. The second picture depicts a fire in the Amazon, but dates back to 1989. A third dates back to at least 2018. The fourth is a digital map of South American fires representing the locations and frequencies of fire in the Amazon from 2000 to 2014. All right, so we can't believe many of the pictures that were making the rounds. But what about the Earth's lungs and 20% of the Earth's oxygen part? Forbes reached out to Dr. Dan Nepstad, a leading expert on the Amazon forest, and asked him about the lungs claim. His answer? It's bullshit.
Nice.
There is no science behind that. The Amazon produces a lot of oxygen, but it uses the same amount of oxygen through respiration, so it's a wash.
How dare it?
So this guy is saying, never mind 20%, essentially none of our oxygen comes from the Amazon rainforest. Can that be true?
Wow.
So the animals would use it? Well, you'll explain.
We'll get there. So several scientists have tried to estimate this. Yadvinder Mali, an ecosystem ecologist, wrote a recent blog post about this. He calculates that tropical forests are responsible for around 34% of photosynthesis on land. Based on its size, the Amazon would account for half of that. That would mean the Amazon generates around 16% of the oxygen produced on land. That percentage goes down to 9% when you take into account the oxygen produced by photoplankton in the ocean. Climate scientist Jonathan Foley pegs it at a more conservative estimate of 6% or less. But as Nepstad said, that's not the whole story, because trees also consume oxygen via cellular respiration, where they convert sugars into energy for growth using oxygen. Mali's research team estimates that trees use a little over half of the oxygen they produce. So now we're down to 4.5 or 3%, depending on whose estimates you use. But Mali says that oxygen is used up by the countless microbes which use oxygen to break down dead organic material in the forest. Mali says the net oxygen effect of the Amazon, or really any other biome, is essentially zero. In an article for The Conversation, Scott Denning, a professor of atmospheric science at Colorado State University, writes, "The often-repeated claim that the Amazon rainforest produces 20% of our planet's oxygen is based on a misunderstanding. In fact, nearly all of Earth's breathable oxygen originated in the oceans, and there is enough of it to last for millions of years. There are many reasons to be appalled by this year's Amazon fires, but depleting Earth's oxygen supply is not one of them."
Does that statement mean that if every plant on the surface and under the surface of the Earth died, we could continue to breathe for millions of years and probably die of other things like not eating? But is that really what that statement is saying?
I was going to get into another part of this, and I'm not going to go too deep on it today because it probably warrants its own segment. But I was going to talk about a scientist and an Atlantic article talking about that scientist, where he paints a scenario where every living thing was burned. What if we combusted every living cell on Earth other than humans? And he wanted to calculate what would happen to the atmosphere if you burned down not just the Amazon, but every forest, every blade of grass, all the flowers, all the bees, all the orchids, all the hummingbirds, all the photoplankton. And he calculated that the concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere would drop from 20.9% to 20.4%.
No.
I look forward to this segment. Wow.
Essentially, I have it here, but his quote is, "Generations of humans would live out their lives breathing the air around them, probably struggling to find food, but not worried about where their next breath would come from."
Fascinating.
We'd do better than the dinosaurs did after that asteroid impact.
Well, now, depending on what that asteroid did, whether it created particulate matter or blocked out the sun and cooled things and stopped food, as Pat said, they'd be looking for food.
Yeah, the food. Yeah,
Interesting.
The big thing.
I think essentially his point in painting this sort of apocalyptic scenario is that in order to understand the concentration of oxygen in our atmosphere, you have to look at it on geological timescales.
saw a headline the other day, Montreal to ban wood stoves by 2020.
Damn.
Montreal is one of the most populous cities in Canada. It's in Quebec, nearby to us in Ottawa here.
Great city.
And the CBC story, that's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, said the city of Montreal plans to adopt a bylaw forcing residents to remove wood-burning stoves and fireplaces by December 31st, 2020. They quote Norman King, an epidemiologist at the Montreal Public Health Board's Urban Environment and Health section, saying, wood burning is a major source of fine particulate air pollution, meaning particles that penetrate into the lungs. He says it's also a cause of many of the smog days in the winter. There are probably more poor air quality days due to the fine particulate pollution in the winter than in the summer, says King. Now, the city initially banned wood-burning appliances for new constructions in 2009, and officials say this bylaw is the next step, although they're not exactly sure what they're going to do if someone doesn't comply. The city says about 50,000 homes in Montreal have to get rid of the wood-burning appliances by the end of 2020, and there's a program called Feu Vert, which I mean, what's towards fire? What would you say that's?
Feu vert means green fire.
Oh yeah, green fire.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Yeah, in that context. Where residents can remove their wood-burning stove and receive up to $900 to replace it with a natural gas or propane appliance.
It may also be a pun because feu vert can refer to like the green light on a stoplight.
Okay, I think it's probably like the whole green energy, green fire. That's probably what they're going for. So, is this true? I'm thinking of the panels. If it was true, how would you feel about it? And do you think you might be in conflict how you feel about it if it was true? Quick thoughts. Adam.
If it's true that it's bad for all this stuff,
Yeah.
would it be good to stop it?
Would you care?
Would I care? Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the alternative. Your alternative is burning fossil fuels, right? There's a lot to consider, but yeah, it would factor into it for me.
Elan and Pat, any thoughts?
I don't know. I guess if it's the evidence shows that it's healthier not to use a wood stove, I don't see why I would be against that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree, although I would be surprised.
All right. So let's explore. I'm going to shift to using Health Canada as a source. And they basically give us the background. Some people use wood as a primary source of heat, and others you have wood stoves as a backup in case of emergencies, like power failures. Wood heating is popular in some areas because it's a renewable fuel. However, the smoke from wood stoves and fireplaces pollutes the air outdoors and contributes to smog. Outdoor air pollution has been associated with a wide range of adverse health effects, and the scientific literature to date indicates that most sources, including wood smoke, appear to play a role in these effects. Smoke from outside can also seep into buildings, including nearby homes, and affect air quality. The air inside your home can also be affected when you open the stove to add wood if your wood stove leaks. And as for actual pollutants in wood smoke, these are the main ones. First, there's particulate matter, or otherwise known as PM to those in the business, and this is the term for solid or liquid particles found in the air and is one of the primary components of smog. They can be very small and can travel deep into your lungs, causing respiratory and heart problems. Number 2 is carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless gas that is poisonous at high levels. It can interfere with the delivery of oxygen to the blood to the rest of your body. There's also volatile organic compounds, and these are a wide range of stuffs that has like no color, taste, or smell, but can have some negative health effects. And polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And these are a health concern because of their potential to cause cancer. So these are 4 things that are in wood smoke. In communities where wood heating is common, wood smoke can be responsible for as much as 25% of the airborne particulate matter, 15% of the volatile organic compounds, and 10% of the carbon monoxide in the atmosphere. Wood smoke also contains small quantities of other toxic compounds, including nitrogen oxides and chlorinated dioxins. These can contribute to environmental hazards like smog and acid rain. So far, not so good, right?
No.
Oh man, Darren, when you talk all sciencey like that, it sounds like we're in really big trouble.
Well, exposure to the pollutants in wood smoke can cause eye, nose, and throat irritation, headaches, nausea, dizziness. Wood smoke can also make asthma worse, has been associated with an increase in respiratory problems. Smog, to which wood smoke can be a significant contributor, has been linked to severe health risks, including increased hospital admissions and even premature death.
So yeah, as a skeptic though, I wonder, you're saying all of these adverse effects, but then at the same time, everyone, or like lots of people are using wood smoke and you don't see people dropping dead. So like how much of an increased risk really is it?
I think you have to look over a longer time period.
Well, of course.
Right. So that's the main issue.
But it might be the kind of thing where there's all of these bad potential side effects, but when you actually look at the epidemiological data, maybe there's nothing there. But obviously you'll get into it. I'm really interested to find out. I'm glad you're doing this segment, Darren. You're doing a great job so far.
So continuing with the Health Canada info, while occasional exposure to wood smoke may cause minor and reversible problems for those with significant respiratory disease, regular and continued exposure to this and other sources of smog may cause some additional and more significant health risks. These health risks are greater for people with existing heart and lung problems. Children are also at greater risk because the respiratory systems are still developing and because they inhale more or due to the higher rates of activity.
I guess back in the day it was, health effects of wood burning versus health effects of freezing to death.
Well, yeah.
Which in Montreal can be a problem. But today we have alternatives.
Yeah, freezing to death maybe give you pneumonia, but it's not as bad for your lungs. In a certain way.
Yeah.
So is this true? Is this all that bad? Is this why they're banning it? And actually, sadly, the answer is yes. It's pretty legit. Now, just very recently, there was a Dana study or two that said, here's the title of the study, or at least the title of the news coverage, no serious harm in breathing wood smoke. And they did this study where participants spent three-hour sessions in a room where they were exposed to 3 different types of air. Filtered, the air with a few particles, and with many particles. And they found that 3 hours was generally okay. Okay, now, of course, when they look at smog or people just even sitting in traffic and when there's a lot of smog in a city, that's bad.
Yeah.
And the problem is, of course, that this doesn't really look at the long-term exposure.
Yeah.
As well, there are countless studies that say this is a problem. This is actually not that controversial when you look at it. You're burning stuff and it's smoke and it's particulate matter and it's not good for you. Why I was asking how you'd feel, and I'm going to segue to something Sam Harris wrote about, is that for most people, at least that I know, at least personally, the smell of a fireplace is a very positive thing.
Oh, for sure.
If you're walking along outside, like, oh, someone has a fire, right? Or in my home, fire was like, fire in a fireplace was used, we had fire. Fire in a fireplace was used to supplement heating.
Yes.
It really was recreational. It was almost, entertainment. Yeah, you wouldn't have to use the official heating as much as we had when you had the fire on, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And it was just very nice and pleasant and warming because it's fire.
Or you're outside in a campfire.
Yeah.
It's super fun. You roast some marshmallows.
Exactly.
It's fantastic.
Exactly. And it's interesting the timing of this because Sam Harris wrote something on wood smoke about over a year ago. And I thought about covering it from time to time, and then seeing this Montreal thing just kick in just last week in Canada was certainly an impetus. For his article, Sam Harris quotes Naher et al., a 2007 study called Wood Smoke Health Effects, a Review from Inhalation Toxicology. And I have some issues with Sam Harris, but he's usually good at stating things very clearly, simply, and sometimes harshly. And so I'm going to quote him a bit at length because I thought he did a good general summary of the issue, and including how people feel about it. Because wood is among the most natural substances on Earth, and its use as a fuel is universal, many people imagine that burning wood must be a perfectly benign thing to do. Breathing winter air scented by wood smoke seems utterly unlike puffing on a cigarette or inhaling the exhaust from a passing truck, but this is an illusion. This is what we know from a scientific point of view. There is no amount of wood smoke that is good to breathe. It is at least as bad for you as cigarettes, and probably much worse. One study found it to be 30 times more potent a carcinogen. The smoke from an ordinary wood fire contains hundreds of compounds known to be carcinogenic, mutagenic, tetragenic, and irritating the respiratory system. Most of the particles generated by burning wood are smaller than 1 micron, a size believed the most damaging to our lungs. In fact, these particles are so fine that they can evade our mucociliary defenses and travel directly into the bloodstream, posing a risk to the heart. Particles this size also resist gravitational settling, remaining airborne for weeks at a time. Once they have exited your chimney, the toxic gases, like benzene, and particles that make up smoke freely pass back into your home and into the homes of others. Research shows that nearly 70% of chimney smoke re-enters nearby buildings. Children who live in homes with active fireplaces or wood stoves, or in areas where wood burning is common, suffer a higher incidence of asthma, cough, bronchitis, nocturnal awakening, and compromised lung function. Among adults, wood burning is associated with more frequent emergency room visits and hospital admission for respiratory illness, along with increased mortality from heart attacks. The inhalation of wood smoke, even at relatively low levels, alters pulmonary immune function, leading to a greater susceptibility to colds, flus, and other respiratory infections. All these effects are borne disproportionately by children and the elderly. The unhappy truth about burning wood has been scientifically established to a moral certainty. That nice cozy fire in your fireplace is bad for you. It is bad for your children. It is bad for your neighbors and their children. So Sam's pretty declarative because the research is pretty clear, and that's similarly why Health Canada is also quite overt in their statements. And as you take a step back, you can sort of think, this is smoke. why wouldn't it be harmful? The idea of burning anything and inhaling particulate matter is not that good. One of the reasons Montreal is banning it is because you don't know if people are just burning wood. That's the problem with fireplaces. People just sometimes throw anything in the fire. Sometimes they burn different types of wood. Sometimes they're burning maybe even plastics or whatnot. And who knows what and to what degree. And do they all have really clean chimneys? And even so, we just learned it's going in there, then it's going to come back in their house anyway. And Sam did a good job in his piece because he takes the angle of trying to identify or empathize with those who might have strong, say, religious convictions. Because he's found that whenever he's communicated this idea to supposedly rational people, they just don't want to believe it. They don't want to think this fireplace could be harming their children because it's so positive in the entirety of their life experience up to the point where they're told it's bad.
Well, it's not just a rational choice of people of one energy source versus another. It's you're talking about a thing which people find pleasure from, which people take enjoyment from, and I think that's where. Well, no kidding. And
there are some people, who have to burn wood to have heat, right? So the ban wasn't for the entire province of Quebec.
That'd be impossible.
Well, the point was for the city of Montreal, because people can get their heat through other means. It's not saying, yes, you can never get your heat from wood smoke. We realize that that's a situation as well. Globally, this is a huge problem that causes actually millions of deaths. Just people inhaling smoke from bad types of either stoves or heating devices in huts or similar apparati.
I think as Canadians, we also kind of need to mention, like, everyone has gas in their homes. Well, anyone who lives in a city has gas that's pumped into their homes for heating. Whereas if you go in the States, it doesn't take very long till you get to a place where it just doesn't get that cold that it's just not a thing people have.
Right.
They turn the air conditioner on reverse. I don't even know how that works to cause heat because it doesn't need to be an efficient heating process because it's not freezing cold for half of the year, right?
Adam, you said most people in metropolitan areas have gas coming into their home, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think a lot of people heat with oil. A lot of people heat with electric.
Okay, that's fair, Pat. And it's probably not necessarily true for cities that don't get as cold as Ottawa does. I guess the point I was trying to make is a lot of people have access to have gas sort of within a major infrastructure, but that may not also be true as well.
Right. I think most modern homes are natural gas.
Yeah, any home I've ever been in has. So that's maybe my bias looking at the situation here.
So this is one of those important issues that seems pretty obvious when you just take a step back. Like, oh, so you're burning stuff and then you're smelling the burning. When Dennis Miller had this line about when people said they didn't know cigarettes, were bad for them. He's like, are you kidding me? It's like, no one says, stand over a campfire and inhale deeply for an hour. It's effing smoke. You're lying through the hole in your trachea.
I wonder if there's like some sort of evolutionary attraction to the smell of smoke as a source of heat or
that seems pretty sketchy. I think there's there may be an attraction to fire because it's bright and it's shiny and it's warm, right? But
I think it's more likely that people associate the smell with exactly what we talked about: fun at around a campfire, family times around the fireplace.
Yeah, exactly. It's like childhood, and that's the thing, that now that you know this, when you smell it, are you going to like, oh, that's great? No, it's not. Oh, and then you get in an internal conflict right away?
So here's the product that we need to make. So they have these gas fireplaces, and they have the not even gas. They have the electric ones that just have like a picture of fire or whatever, the little flippy little paper type things in it. You need to put something that smells like a burning wood, but doesn't have the negative health effects, doesn't have the particulate or whatever.
Particulate matter.
So I need to basically create a wood-smelling air freshener.
There you go. That would sell well.
What do you think? Yeah.
And then people walk into your house like, oh, this is killing me, since I heard that thing on the reality check.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving to some general help to minimize your risk if you're actually still involved in wood smoke. The number one thing, of course, is to try to switch to a different heat source if you're still using that, like natural gas or oil.
Sure.
And if you do, you can engage in other methods, which I'm going to list here. This is also from Health Canada.
Before you continue, I just Googled wood smell air freshener, and Adam, I'm sorry, but this has been invented many times over. So,
damn it.
Sorry.
But it smells like wood, or it smells like burning wood?
Yeah, burning wood. A few of them, and I didn't even search for burning wood.
I would like to say that's entirely unsurprising. Good work, Elan.
I guess.
So some quick tips. 1. Use dry, clean wood that is properly seasoned. It should be cut, split, and stacked in a covered area for about 6 months, including the summer months before burning. That was new to me. Allow more ventilation when starting a fire, and close the dampers when the wood is well charred. This technique produces more heat and uses less wood. Use smaller pieces of wood. They burn more efficiently, a better source of heat. Do not burn household garbage or cardboard. Plastics, foam, or the colored ink on magazine, boxes, and wrappers can also be harmful.
I've broken a lot of these rules.
I'm sure you have.
Adam.
Do not burn ocean driftwood, plywood, particle board, or any wood with glue on or in it. They all release toxic chemicals when burned. Do not burn wet, rotted, diseased, or moldy wood, as that may expose your family to molds and spores that can harm their health. Try to avoid burning wood on days when the air pollution level is high. That seems somewhat obvious. And finally, protect yourself and your family from carbon monoxide poisoning by installing at least one CO detector in your home. Which we actually talked, I think, about when I talked about caves and basements.
Oh, yeah.
Way back. Yeah. So just to conclude, again, Harris does a good job. We know wood smoke is harmful and you shouldn't do it. And here he says, if you care about your family's health and that of your neighbors, the sight of a glowing hearth should be about as comforting as the sight of a diesel engine idling in your living room.
Damn. So what's the public reaction in Montreal like to this? Is there a lot of resistance to it?
Any state, government, can't trust science. And I'm sure some other people are going, well, I see the thing is, if they already put the measure in for 2009, no new constructions.
Yeah.
They would already be, be aware, right? But I could see there's some people who, say in the older, 60, 70, like, what are you talking about?
Well, if you have an old home...
Yeah.
I mean, this is an old established city.
Yeah.
If it was a rural area, I think you'd have a lot of problem because you don't have distribution there.
Well, no, that's the exact
You don't have as many options.
And Montreal has, a couple million people, and this is 50,000 homes. So it's not really a large percentage overall.
Yeah.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @TRC_podcast.